We begin by simply listening, slow down, and see just how peaceful today can be. Thanks so much for swinging by. You can call me your host, your obedient servant, Sebastian St. Chica Smalls. You're killing me, Smalls. Vincent twice. You can always call me Bennett. The plan for this one is more Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda, and more Jane Eyre read by the San Diego Library lady. Again, thank you so much for swinging by. Wish us luck.
Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Christina Wainwright, the manager of the Pacific Beach Library. And today we are getting ready for chapter, I believe it's 28. Thank you. Chapter 28 of reading and enjoying tea with Jane Eyre. And before we get started, I want to make a really exciting announcement. I actually just posted it on the Facebook group too. So if you have not seen the announcement yet, basically it's that I did the math and we are going to manage to finish Jane Eyre next Friday. I'm really excited by it. And so there's going to be a couple days where we're going to read double chapters. None of them will be as long as yesterday, I promise. That was the longest chapter in the book. And so we're going to finish next Friday. And so what that means is, once we finish tea with Jane Eyre, what book should we have tea with starting in June? I would love it if you would share your suggestions on the post that I started. Just comment below with what titles you'd like to read. If you have multiple suggestions, please put a separate one in each comment. And that way, for example, maybe we have somebody who's interested in reading Wuthering Heights because you want to stay with the Brontes. Or maybe somebody wants to read Emma by Jane Austen. I like that one. Or a Dickens novel or anything like that. Just go ahead and post your comments. My two requests are, one, that it be in the public domain. I don't want to pay for copyright. And so the book needs to either be published before 1925 or by an author who passed away more than 70 years ago. And that way, again, the book will be available for use by all. The other thing would be, just for the sake of all of our reading pleasure, please make it not have too many accents, because otherwise, well, unless you want it to be a comedic experience as you listen to me try to read the accents, that could be fun. Which leads me to the next point that we'll be getting to in a second. But wait, finishing with that, if you do have comments or suggestions for what books we should read next, please do comment them in that thread. And then I figure by next Tuesday, we can make our announcement. I invite you all to vote on what books you want to read. And then for the top three, I'll just go ahead and pick the one that I like best because I'm reading them. I want to do something that I actually love too. And so, or that I've always wanted to read that I never have yet. So thank you so much for sharing your suggestions. I look forward to seeing what you'd like to read next. Now, so going into today's, I actually have my little notes about things I want to mention. And today I did want to mention accents because I will give you a little sneak peek. This chapter has a bit of German, which I have never studied at all. So again, as usual, I make my apology in advance for the poor German accent I'm going to be using. And there's another character who is
for your poor German accent.
Let's just say she speaks in a local dialect as a northern, as somebody from the north of England. And so again, I will be reading it to the best of my ability. And again, I apologize for my bad accent. So let's go ahead and get started with our tea. Today we're drinking another Earl Grey. And the reason is because my coworker brought in some absolutely delightful Earl Grey flavored shortbread cookies this morning. They were so good. They actually had little bits of the tea baked into the cookies. Yummy. And so when she brought those in, we had to make some Earl Grey tea to go with it. And then once I had Earl Grey tea, I liked it so much I had to drink more. And so yeah, a fresh pot of Earl Grey to enjoy with our tea and our reading today. Might as well have a sip. Just as good as it always is. And so, let's see. We should also do a quick recap of yesterday's chapter.
Doing this right now.
For those of you who maybe tried to put it behind you because it was so sad. So 2 days ago, or 2 chapters ago, that was when we learned that Mr. Rochester is actually married and so could not wed Jane Eyre. In yesterday's chapter, he tried to convince her that his marriage was but a legal... word for it, I can't even, just something that doesn't really matter. It was inconsequential. It's just like a little legal thing that, needn't bother them at all. That his true wife would be Jane, and that the two of them could live together in all but the legal sense as husband and wife. And Jane, for all of her love of Mr. Rochester and her sorrow and disappointment about the, not being able to get married, she could not abide by that. That she felt that, there's a really, again, I'm going to harken back to the old thing when she was a kid. There's a nice scene where she says how no one else, oh gosh, I really wish I could remember the exact phrasing for it. It was sort of like a thing of who would care what you did. Here we go. Who in the world cares for you, or who will be injured by what you do? And she replies, I care for myself. The more solitary, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself. And it reminded me a lot, too, of that scene way back in the beginning, which I probably should have put a sticky note on, when she speaks with, here we go, it came right to the page, because apparently I loved it so much. In chapter 8, when she spoke with Helen Burns back at the Lowood School, and she was saying how she felt so hated by the rest of the members of the school because Mr. Brocklehurst had told them all that Jane was a liar. And Helen says to her, if all the world hated you and believed you wicked, without your own, while your own conscience approved you and absolved you from guilt, you would not be without friends. And I think it's the same idea brought forward again, that theme when she was a young child, telling her that as long as you know what you're doing is right, and you believe in it, and you have faith in yourself, then you're never going to be alone, and you won't regret your actions. And so the same thing again too when Mr. Rochester tried to convince her that she need not live according to society, and for herself she decided it isn't just about what society is saying is right, it's what she believes is right, and that she needs to be able to respect herself at the end of the day. So again, that was a lovely moment for Jane, where she stood up for herself even when it was difficult. So where that chapter ended was that Mr. Rochester went to bed, trying to give her some more time to think about things, hopefully make the decision to stay with him. And what she realized was that she needed to leave. She couldn't stand the temptation of being there anymore with him. She had to leave immediately. And so she packs up her scant belongings, and she walks out into the night, crying, sobbing, falling down on the ground at some point and crawling along. But she gets up and she keeps going, and she leaves Thornfield Hall. She eventually basically hitches a ride with a guy who's driving by with his carriage. She gets on and she
as soon as I'm out of this place, up on that bridge, I'm going to save my freaking game.
And so let's continue on with chapter 28 of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And again, I apologize for my bad accents that I'm going to do my best to do.
We don't care about the accents.
Let's go in. Chapter 28. 2 days are past. It is a summer evening. The coachman has set me down at a place called Whitcross. He could take me no further for the sum I had given, and I was not possessed of another shilling in the world. The coach is a mile off by this time. I am alone. At this moment, I discover that I forgot to take my parcel out of the pocket of the coach, where I had placed it for safety. There it remains, there it must remain, and now I am absolutely destitute. Whitcross is no town, nor even a hamlet.
I don't like
it is but a stone pillar set up where 4 roads meet.
I've eaten all
Whitewashed,
the
suppose,
bosses
to be more obvious at a distance and in darkness.
Okay.
4 arms spring from its summit. The nearest town to which this point is, according to the inscription, distant 10 miles. The furthest, above 20. From the well-known names of these towns, I learn in what county I have lighted. In North Midlandshire, dust with moorland, ridged with mountains. This I see.
Don't know how I'm
there are great moors behind and on each hand of me. There are waves of mountains far beyond that deep valley at my feet. The population here must be thin, and I see no passengers on these roads. They stretch out east, west, north, and south, white, broad, lonely. They are all cut in the moor, and the heather grows deep and wild to their very verge.
This is a different
Yet a chance traveler might pass by, and I wish no eye to see me now. Strangers would wonder what I am doing, lingering here at the signpost, evidently objectless and lost.
No.
I might be questioned. I could give no answer but what would sound incredible and excite suspicion. Not a tie holds me to human society at this moment.
That was worthless.
Not a charm or hope calls me where my fellow creatures are. None that saw me would have a kind thought or a good wish for me. I have no relative but the universal mother, nature. I will seek her breast and ask for toes. I struck straight into the heat. I hold on to a hollow I saw deeply furrowing the brown moorside. I waded, knee-deep in the dark growth. I turned with its turnings, and finding a moss-blackened granite crag in a hidden angle, I sat down under it.
If you go back to the first ever one I did of this,
the crag
Jane
protected
Eyre
my
and Zelda,
head. The sky was over that.
Like there was this audio doubling
Some time
problem
passed
in
before
some
I
of the
became tranquil
episodes,
even
and
here.
then
I had a vague dread
there
that
was
wild
another
cattle might be
problem
near,
where
or that some sportsman or poacher might
my
discover
microphone
me.
was muted
If
for
a
some
gust
reason.
of wind swept the waste,
So I kind of
looked
see
up.
this whole
Fearful, it was the rush of a bull.
marathon as like
If a plover whistled,
practice
I imagined it was a man.
for
Finding my apprehensions
the
unfounded,
sequel,
however,
which is
and
coming out
calmed by
really
the deep
fast, Legend of
silence that
Zelda:
reigned as
Tears of the
evening declined to
Kingdom, and it just
nightfall,
makes
I
sense
took
if we like
confidence.
this
As yet,
San
I had
Diego
not
library
thought.
lady. Why
I had
not
only
do Tears of the
listened,
Kingdom and
watched,
Dracula?
dreaded.
But I was thinking,
Now
since it's
I
the first
regained
time
the
ever
faculty
seeing
of
that
reflection.
game, if it ever comes out,
What was I to do?
Um,
Where to go?
I
Oh,
would want
intolerable
to
questions when
make
I could
a
do nothing
U-turn
and go
during like
nowhere.
the cinema scenes,
When a
since
long
I've
way
seen them
must
for the
yet be
first
measured by
time.
my weary and
I
trembling
would want to
limbs
give it
before I
my
could reach
undivided
human habitation. When cold
But I don't
charity
know.
must be
This is,
entreated
this
before
is,
I could get a lodging.
This is
Reluctant
assuming I'm
sympathy
alive with
importuned. Almost certain repulse incurred before my tale could
alive
be
when the
listened
stupid
to
sequel
or one
comes
of
out.
my wants relieved.
I was just getting off the cart.
I
You're gonna
touched
throw
the heath.
flaming rocks
It was
at me when I'm
dry
still on
and
the
yet
cart.
warm with the heat of the summer day. I looked at the sky. It was pure. A kindly star twinkled just above the chasm ridge. The dew fell, but with propitious softness. No breeze whispered. Nature seemed to me benign and good. I thought she loved me, outcast as I was, and I, who from man could anticipate only mistrust, rejection, insult, clung to her with filial fondness. Tonight, at least, I would be her guest. As
Apparently,
I was her
there's
child.
like 38
My mother
chapters
would
in
lodge
Jane
me
Eyre.
without money
So
and
I'm
without
curious,
price.
what's going to
I
last
had
longer,
one
the
morsel of
stupid
bread
game
yet,
or
the
Jane
remnant
Eyre?
of a roll I had bought in
This
a
game
town
would
that
be
passed
over
through at noon with
faster
a stray
if I
penny,
just,
my last coin. I saw ripe bilberries
When you beat it
gleaming
right
here
now,
and there like jet beads
But that would
in
be
the heat.
challenging
I gathered
without
a
the ability
handful
of getting
and
from
eat
the
them with
Goron
the bread.
guy and that heart
My
container
hunger,
that would
sharp
use
as
the
full,
sequel.
was, if not
So I'm
satisfied,
kind of focused on the
appeased
Goron.
by this hermit's
Oh, and
meal.
that's the useless card
I
anyway.
said my evening prayers at its conclusion, and then chose my couch.
I feel
Beside
like in
the
this
crag,
stupid
the heat
area,
was very
every
deep.
little bit of progress
When I laid
make,
down, my
I
feet were
should
buried in
save
it.
my stupid game,
Rising
because
high
I
on
get
each side,
tired of
it
being
left
sent
only a
back in
narrow
time.
space for the night air to invade. I folded my shawl double and spread it over me for a coverlet. A low, mossy swell was my pillow. Thus lodged, I was not, at least at the
That's not gonna
commencement of the night, cold. My rest might have been blissful enough, only a sad heart broke it. It plained of its gaping wounds, its inward bleeding, its broken cords. It trembled for Mr. Rochester in his doom. It bemoaned him with bitter pity. It demanded him with ceaseless longing. And impotent as a bird with both wings broken, it still quivered its shattered pinions in vain attempts to seek him. Worn out with this torture of thought, I rose to my knees. Night was come, and her planets were risen. A safe, still night. Too serene for the companionship of fear. We know that God is everywhere, but certainly we feel his presence most when his works are on the grandest scale spread before us. And it is in the unclouded night sky, where his worlds wheel their silent course, that we read clearest his infinitude, his
I'm sharing a lot of my internal thoughts and secrets, and I'm only 13 minutes into this stupid
I had risen to
episode.
my knees to pray for Mr. Rochester.
So this
Looking
is
up,
long
I,
format
with tear-dimmed
episodes.
eyes, saw the mighty Milky
There's less
Way.
effort that goes into each
Remembering what it
moment
was,
of them,
what
because I'm
countless
just,
systems that
unlike
have
you, I'm
swept
just
space like a soft trace
supposed
of
to be
light.
listening to Jane
I
Eyre,
felt the
but
might
right now I
and
just have
strength
stuff
of
to get
God.
off my chest.
Sure was I of his efficiency to save what he had made.
But I'm toyed
Convinced
with
I
the
grew
idea of
that
short
neither
format
earth should perish,
episodes,
nor one of the souls
which is
be
a totally
treasured.
different ball of wax.
I turned
It's like,
my
let's
prayer
play
to
Marble
Thanksgiving.
Madness once,
The source of
or
life
let's
was
read a
also the
passage
savior
from
of
Walden.
spirits. Mr. Rochester was
I added
safe.
background music
He was
to one of my
God's,
dramatic
and by God
readings,
he
and
would
it
be guarded.
vastly
I
affected
again
how
nestled
well
to the breast
it
of the hill,
performed. It
and
was
ere
like
long,
3
in
times as
sleep,
good as
forgot
any other
sorrow.
monologue I did, because usually when you just start reading a weird speech on TikTok,
But next
they just
day,
scroll
want
past in
came
less
to
than
me,
a second.
pale and bare.
But if you put in background
Long
music
after the
and
little
you don't
birds
do
had
a
left their
weird
nests,
intro,
long
well,
after
that
bees
one
had come in
performed
the
very
sweet
well.
prime
It
of
was
day
also
to
one
gather
of
the
the best
honey
quotes
heath,
ever. So
to gather
that
the
quote
heath
is so
honey
good,
before
I
the
might
dew was
reuse
dried,
that same
when the
quote
long
rather
morning
than
shadows were
seek
curtailed
out
and the
new
sun
literary
filled earth and
quotes.
sky.
It's good to
I got
find
up
the old
and
new
looked
stuff,
round me.
but sometimes the old ones need
What
to
a
be like
still,
repeat
hot,
episodes, I
perfect
think,
day.
because you
What
need
a
to
golden
repeat the good
desert
messages
is
and
spreading
tell people
more.
get 'em.
Everywhere sunshine. I wished I could live in it and on it. I saw a lizard run over the crag. I saw a bee busy among the sweet bilberries. I would fain at the moment have become bee or lizard, that I might have found fit. I would fain at the moment have become bee or lizard, that I might have found fitting nutriment, permanent shelter here. But I was a human being and had a human being's wants. I must not linger where there was nothing to supply them. I rose. I looked back at the bed I had made. Hopeless of the future, I wished but this, that my Maker had that night thought good to require my soul of me while I slept, and that this weary frame, absolved by death from further conflict with fate, had now but to decay quietly and mingle in peace with the soil of this wilderness. Life, however, was yet in my possession, with all its requirements and pains and responsibilities. The burden must be carried, the want provided for, the suffering endured, the responsibility fulfilled. I set out. Whitcross regained, I followed a road which led from the sun, now fervent and high. By no other circumstance had I will to decide my choice. I walked a long time, and when I thought I had nearly done enough, and might conscientiously yield to the fatigue that almost overpowered me, might relax this forced action, and sitting down on a stone I saw near, submit resistlessly to the apathy that clogged heart and limb, I heard a bell chime, the church bell. I turned in the direction of the sound, and there, among the romantic hills, whose changes in aspect I had ceased to note an hour ago, I saw a hamlet and a spire. All the valley at my right hand was full of pasture fields and cornfields and wood, and a glittering stream ran zigzag through the varied shades of green, the mellowing grain, the somber woodland, the clear and sunny lea. Recalled by the rumbling of wheels to the road before me, I saw a heavily laden wagon laboring up the hill, and not far beyond were 2 cows and their drover. Human life and human labor were near. I must struggle on, strive to live and bend and toil like the rest. About 2:00 p.m., I entered the village. At the bottom of its one street, there was a little shop with some cakes of bread in the window. I coveted a cake of bread. With that refreshment, I could perhaps regain a degree of energy. Without it, it would be difficult to proceed. The wish to have some strength and some vigor returned to me as soon as I was among my fellow beings. I felt it would be degrading to faint with hunger on the causeway of a hamlet. Had I nothing about me I could offer in exchange for one of these rolls, I considered. I had a small silk handkerchief tied round my throat. I had my gloves. I could hardly tell how men and women in extremities of destitution proceeded. I did not know whether either of these articles would be accepted. Probably they would not, but I must try. I entered the shop. A woman was there. Seeing a respectably dressed person, a lady as she supposed, she came forward with civility. How could she serve me? I was seized with shame. My tongue would not utter the request I had prepared. I dared not offer her the half-worn gloves, the creased handkerchief. Besides, I felt it would be absurd. I only begged permission to sit down a moment, as I was tired. Disappointed in the expectation of a customer, she coolly acceded to my request. She pointed to a seat. I sunk into it.
15.
I felt sorely urged to weep, but conscious how unseasonable such a manifestation would be, I restrained
really
it.
fast,
Soon I asked her if there were any dressmaker or plain workwoman in the town or in the village. Yes, 2 or 3, quite as many as there was. I was driven to the point now. I was brought face to face with necessity. I stood in the position of one without a resource, without a friend, without a coin. I must do something. What? I must apply somewhere. Where? Did she know of any place in the neighborhood where a servant was wanted? Nay, she couldn't say. What was the chief trade in this place? What did most of the people do? Some were farm laborers. A good deal worked at Mr. Oliver's needle factory and at the foundry. Did Mr. Oliver employ women? Nay, it was men's work. And what did the women do? I not, was the answer. Some does one thing, some another. Poor folk mun get on as they can. She seemed to be tired of my questions, and indeed, what claim had I to importunity? A neighbor or two came in. My chair was evidently wanted. I took leave. I passed up the street, looking as I went at all the houses to the right and to the left, but I could discover no pretext, nor see an inducement to enter any. I rambled round the hamlet, going sometimes to a little distance and returning again for an hour or more. Much exhausted and suffering greatly now for want of food, I turned aside into a lane and sat down under the hedge. Ere many minutes had elapsed, I was again on my feet, however, and again searching something. A resource, or at least an informant. A pretty little house stood at the top of the lane with a garden before it, exquisitely neat and brilliantly blooming. I stopped at it. What business had I to approach the white door or touch the glittering knocker? In what way could it possibly be the interest of the inhabitants of that dwelling to serve me? Yet I drew near and knocked. A mild-looking, cleanly attired young woman opened the door. In such a voice as might be expected from a hopeless heart and fainting frame, a voice wretchedly low and faltering, I asked if a servant was wanted here. No, said she.
I just gotta wail on him with the cobble smasher.
Can you tell me where I could get employment of any kind? I continued. I am a stranger, without acquaintance in this place. I want some work, no matter what. But it was not her business to think for me or to seek a place for me. Besides, in her eyes, how doubtful must have appeared my character, position, tale.
You just took your time with this game and smelled
she was
the
sorry
roses
she could
and
give
stuff.
me no information, and the white door closed quite gently and civilly,
I'm kind of
but
weak
it
because
shut
I'm
me
kind of
out.
rushing through the game, so I
If
need
she had
it
held it open a little longer,
moderately
I believe I should have
complete by the
begged a
time
piece of
Jane Eyre
bread,
rolls away.
for I was now brought low.
I want to finish the game
I
around
could not bear to return to the sort of village where, besides, no prospect of gain was visible. I should have longed rather to deviate to a wood I saw not far off, which appeared in its thick shade to offer inviting shelter. But I was so sick, so weak, so gnawed with nature's cravings. Instinct kept me roaming round abodes where there was a chance of food. Solitude would be no solitude, rest no rest, while the vulture hungered thus sank deep in talons in my
He's moving
side.
sideways.
I drew near houses. I left them and came back again, and again I wandered away, always repelled by the consciousness of having no claim to ask, no right to expect interest in my isolated lot. Meanwhile, the afternoon advanced, while I thus wandered about like a lost and starving dog. In crossing a field, I saw the church spire before me. I hastened toward it. Near the churchyard, and in the middle of a garden, stood a well-built, though small house, which I had no doubt was the parsonage. I remembered that strangers who arrive at a place where they have no friends and who want employment sometimes apply to the clergyman for introduction and aid. It is the clergyman's function to help, at least with advice, those who wish to help themselves. I seemed to have something like a right to seek counsel here. Renewing then my courage and gathering my feeble remains of strength, I pushed on. I reached the house and knocked at the kitchen door. An old woman opened. I asked, was this the parsonage? Yes. Was the clergyman in? No. Would he be in soon? No. He was gone from home. To a distance? Not so far. Happened 3 mile. He had been called away by the sudden death of his father. He was at Marsh End now, and would very likely stay there a fortnight longer. Was there any lady of the house? Nay, there was naught but her, and she was housekeeper. And of her, reader, I could not bear to ask the relief for want of which I was sinking. I could not yet beg, and again I crawled away. Once more I took off my handkerchief. Once more I thought of the cakes of bread in the little shop. Oh, but for a crust, for but one mouthful to allay the pang of famine. Instinctively, I turned my face again to the village. I found the shop again, and I went in. And though others were there besides the woman, I ventured the request, would she give me a roll for this handkerchief? She looked at me with evident suspicion. Nay, she never sold stuff in that way. Almost desperate, I asked for half a cake. She again refused. How could she tell where I had got the handkerchief? She said. Would she take the gloves? No. What could she do with them? Reader, it is not pleasant to dwell on these details. Some say there is enjoyment in looking back to painful experience past, but at this day I can scarcely bear to review the times to which I allude. The moral degradation blent with the physical suffering form too distressing a recollection ever to be willingly dwelt on. I blamed none of those who repulsed me. I felt it was what was to be expected and what could not be helped. An ordinary beggar is frequently an object of suspicion, a well-dressed beggar inevitably so. To be sure, what I begged was employment, but whose business was it to provide me with employment? Not certainly that of persons who saw me then for the first time and who knew nothing about my character. And as to the woman who would not take my handkerchief in exchange for her bread, why, she was right. If the offer appeared to her sinister or the exchange unprofitable, let me condense now. I am sick of the subject. A little before dark, I passed a farmhouse, at the open door of which the farmer was sitting, eating his supper of bread and cheese. I stopped and said, "Will you give me a piece of bread? For I am very hungry." He cast on me a glance of surprise, but without answering, he cut a thick slice from his loaf and gave it to me. I imagine he did not think I was a beggar, but only an eccentric sort of lady who had taken a fancy to his brown loaf. As soon as I was out of sight of his house, I sat down and ate it.
Those things will not
I could not
protect
hope
you,
to get a
divine
lodging
beast.
under a roof, and sought it in the wood I have before alluded to. But my night was wretched, my rest broken. The ground was damp, the air cold. Besides, intruders passed near me more than once, and I had again and again to change my quarters. No sense of safety or tranquility befriended me. Toward morning it rained. The whole of the following day was wet. Do not ask me, reader, to give a minute account. Do not ask me, reader, to give a minute account of that day. As before, I sought work. As before, I was repulsed. As before, I starved.
We gotta deal
But
with the
once the food
century.
passed my lips. At the door of a cottage, I saw a little girl about to throw a mess of cold porridge into a pig trough. "Will you give me that?"
The
I asked.
shrine, so I can just teleport.
She
I just
stared
want to
at
go
me.
buy some arrows. That's
"Mother,"
what
she exclaimed, "there is a woman wants me to give her these porridge." "Well, lass," replied a voice within, "give it her if she's a beggar. The pig doesn't want it." The girl emptied the stiffened mold into my hand, and I devoured it ravenously. As the wet twilight deepened, I stopped in a solitary bridle path, which I had been pursuing an hour or more. "My strength is quite failing me," I said in soliloquy.
It's coming!
"I feel I cannot go much further. Shall I be an outcast again this night? While the rain descends so, must I lay my head on the cold, drenched ground? I fear I cannot do otherwise, for who will receive me? But it will be very dreadful with this feeling of hunger, faintness, chill, and this sense of desolation, this total prostration of hope. In all likelihood, though, I should die before morning. And why cannot I reconcile myself to the prospect of death? Why do I struggle to retain a valueless life? Because I know or believe Mr. Rochester is still living, and then to die of want and cold is a fate to which nature cannot submit passively. Oh, Providence, sustain me a little longer. Aid, direct me. My glazed eye wandered over the dim and misty landscape. I saw I had strayed far from the village. It was quite out of sight. The very cultivation surrounding it had disappeared. I had, by crossways and bypaths, once more drawn near the tract of moorland, and now only a few fields, almost as wild and unproductive as the heath from which they were scarcely reclaimed, lay between me and the dusky hill. Well, I would rather die yonder than in the street or on a frequented road, I reflected. And far better that crows and ravens, if any ravens there be in these regions, should pick my flesh from my bones than that they should be imprisoned in a workhouse coffin and molder in a pauper's grave. To the hill then I turned. I reached it. It remained now only to find a hollow where I could lie down and feel at least hidden, if not secure. But all the surface of the waste looked level. It showed no variation but of tint. Green where rush and moss overgrew the marshes. Black where the dry soil bore only heath. Dark as it was getting, I could still see these changes, though but as mere alterations of light and shade, for color had faded with the daylight.
Topaz.
My eyes still roved over the sullen
can upgrade
swell
my
and
armor.
along the moor edge, vanishing amid the wildest scenery, when, at one dim point, far in among the marshes and the ridges, a light sprung up. That is an ignis fatuus, was my first thought, and I expected it would soon vanish. It burned on, however, quite steadily, neither receding nor advancing. "Is it then a bonfire just kindled?" I questioned. I watched to see whether it would spread, but no, As it did not diminish, so it did not enlarge. It may be a candle in a house, I then conjectured. But if so, I can never reach it. It is much too far away. And were it within a yard of me, what would it avail? I should but knock at the door to have it shut in my face. And I sunk down where I stood and hid my face against the ground. I lay still a while. The night wind swept over the hill and over me and died moaning in the distance. The rain fell fast, wetting me afresh to the skin. Could I but have stiffened to the still frost, the friendly numbness of death, it might have pelted on. I should not have felt it, but my yet living flesh shuddered to its chilling influence. I rose ere long. The light was yet there, shining dim but constant through the rain. I tried to walk again. I dragged my exhausted limbs slowly toward it. It led me aslant over the hill, through a wide bog which would have been impassable in winter and was splashy and shaking even now in the height of summer. Here I fell twice, but as often I rose and rallied my faculties. This light was my forlorn hope. I must gain it. Having crossed the marsh, I saw a trace of white over the moor. I approached it. It was a road or a track. It led straight up to the light, which now beamed from a sort of knoll amid a clump of trees. Firs, apparently, from what I could distinguish of the character of their forms and foliage through the gloom. My star vanished as I drew near. Some obstacle had intervened between me and it. I put out my hand to feel the dark mass before me. I discriminated the rough stones of a low wall, above it something like palisades, and within a high and prickly hedge. I groped on. Again, a whitish object gleamed before me. It was a gate, a wicket. It moved on its hinges as I touched it. On each side stood a sable bush, holly or yew. Entering the gate and passing the shrubs, the silhouette of a house rose to view. Black, low, and rather long, but the guiding light shone nowhere. All was obscurity. Were the inmates retired to rest? I feared it must be so. In seeking the door, I turned an angle. There shot out the friendly gleam again, from the lozenged panes of a very small latticed window within a foot of the ground, made still smaller by the growth of ivy or some other creeping plant, whose leaves clustered thick over the portion of the house wall in which it was set. The aperture was so screened and narrow that curtain or shutter had been deemed unnecessary, and when I stooped down and put aside the spray of foliage shooting over it, I could see all within. I could see clearly a room with a sanded floor, clean scoured, a dresser of walnut with pewter plates ranged in rows, reflecting the redness and radiance of a glowing peat fire. I could see a clock, a white deal table, some chairs. The candle whose ray had been my beacon burned on the table, and by its light an elderly woman, somewhat rough-looking but scrupulously clean, like all about her, was knitting a stocking. I noticed these objects cursorily only. In them there was nothing extraordinary. A group of more interest appeared near the hearth, sitting still amid the rosy peace and warmth suffusing it. 2 young, graceful women, ladies in every point, sat. One in a low rocking chair, the other on a lower stool. Both wore deep mourning of crepe and bombacin, whose somber garb singularly set off their very fair necks and faces. A large old pointer dog rested its massive head on the knee of one girl. In the lap of the other was cushioned a black cat. A strange place was this humble kitchen for such occupants. Who are they? They could not be the daughters of the elderly person at the table, for she looked like a rustic, and they were all delicacy and cultivation. I had nowhere seen such faces as theirs, and yet as I gazed on them, I seemed intimate with every lineament. I cannot call them handsome. They were too pale and grave for the word. As they each bent over a book, they looked thoughtful, almost with severity. A stand between them supported a second candle and 2 great volumes, to which they frequently referred, comparing them seemingly with the smaller books they held in their hands, like people consulting a dictionary to aid them in the task of translation. This scene was as silent as if all the figures had been shadows, and the firelit apartment a picture. So hushed was it, I could hear the cinders fall from the grate, the clock tick in its obscure corner, and I even fancied I could distinguish the click-click of the woman's knitting needles. When, therefore, a voice broke the strange stillness at last, it was audible enough to me. Listen, Diana, said one of the absorbed students. Franz and old Daniel are together in the nighttime, and Franz is telling a dream from which he is wakened in terror. Listen! And in a low voice, she read something of which not one word was intelligible to me, for it was an unknown tongue, neither French nor Latin. Whether it was Greek or German, I could not tell. That is strong, she said when she had finished. I relish it. The other girl, who had lifted her head to listen to her sister, repeated, while she gazed at the fire, a line which had been read. At a later day, I knew the language in the book. Therefore, I will here quote the line, though when I first heard it, it was only like a stroke on sounding brass to me, conveying no meaning. Da trat Herr Einer anzusehen wie de sturdy knot. Good, good, she exclaimed. Inflated, lofty language. Can't be right. Good, good, she exclaimed, while her dark and deep eyes sparkled. There you have a dim and mighty archangel fitly set before you. The lion is worth 100 pages of fuss-Jim. There's the inflated, lofty language.
My friend died in Tacoma.
Ich wage die Gedanken in der Schall meins Zorne und wirke mittem Gewichte meins Grimms. Then there stepped forth one, in appearance like the starry sky. I weight thoughts in the scale of my anger, and deeds with the weight of my wrath. And it also goes on, the quotation is from Johann Christoph Friedrich von Schiller's The Robbers, Act 5, Scene 1. And then the sister says, I like it. Both were again silent. Is there any country where they talk in that way? Asked the old woman, looking up from her knitting. Yes, Hannah, a far larger country than England, where they talk in no other way. Well, for sure, cause. And not how they can understand one to one the other. And if either you went there, you could tell what they said, I guess. We could probably tell something of what they said, but not all, for we are not as clever as you think us, Hannah. We don't speak German, and we cannot read it without a dictionary to help us. And what good does it do to you? We mean to teach us sometime, or at least the elements, as they say, and then we shall get more money than we do now. Very like. But give over studying. You've done enough for tonight. I think we have. At least I'm tired. Mary, how are you? Or Mary, are you? Mortally. After all, it's tough work fagging away at a language with no master but a lexicon. It is, especially such a language as this crabbed but glorious Deutsch. I wonder when St. John will come home. Surely he will not be long now. It is just 10, looking at a little gold watch she drew from her girdle. It rains fast. Hannah, will you have the goodness to look at the fire in the parlor? The woman rose. She opened a door through which I dimly saw a passage. Soon I saw her stir a fire in an inner room. She presently came back. Ah, childer, said she. If there troubles me to go into yon room now. It looks so lonesome with the chair empty and set back in a corner. She wiped her eyes with her apron. The two girls, grave before, looked sad now. Bati is in a better place, continued Hannah. We shouldn't wish him here again.
I'm gonna die.
And nobody need to have a quieter death nor he had.
This is bad.
You say he never mentioned us, inquired one of the ladies. He hadn't time, Barn. He was gone in a minute, was her father. He had been a bit ailing like the day before, but not to signify. And when Mr. St. John asked if he would like rather needed to send for it, he fair laughed at him. He began again with a bit of heaviness in his head the next day, that is, a fortnight sin, and he went to sleep and never wakened. He had a most stark when your brother went into That's the last of old stock, for ye and Mr. St. John are like of a different sort to them that's gone, for all your mother were mitch o' your way, and almost as book learned. She wore the picture of ye, Mary. Diana's more like your father. I thought them so similar I could not tell where the old servant, for such I now concluded her to be, saw the difference. Both were fair complexioned and slenderly made. Both possessed faces full of distinction and intelligence. One, to be sure, had hair a shade darker than the other, and there was a difference in their style of wearing it. Mary's pale brown locks were parted and braided smooth. Diana's duskier tresses covered her neck with their curls. The clock struck 10. You'll want your supper, I'm sure, observed Hannah, and so will Mr. St. John when he comes in. And she proceeded to prepare the meal. The ladies rose. They seemed about to withdraw to the parlor. Till this moment I had been so intent on watching them, Their appearance and conversation had excited in me so keen an interest, I
No.
had forgotten my own wretched position. Now it recurred to me. More desolate,
So
more
pissed.
desperate than ever, it seemed from contrast. And how impossible did it appear to touch the inmates of this house with concern on my behalf, to make them believe in the truth of my wants and woes, to induce them to vouchsafe a rest for my wanderings. As I groped out the door and knocked at it hesitatingly, I felt that last idea to be indeed a mere chimera. Hannah opened. "What do you want?" she inquired, in a voice of surprise, as she surveyed me by the light of the candle she held. "May I speak to your mistresses?" I said. "Now you had better tell me what you have to say to them. Where do you come from?" "I am a stranger." "What is your business here at this hour?" "I want a night's shelter in an outhouse, or anywhere, and a morsel of bread to eat." Distrust, the very feeling I dreaded, appeared in Hannah's face. "I'll give you a piece of bread," she said after a pause, "but we can't take in a vagrant to lodge. It isn't likely." "Do let me speak to your mistresses." "No, not I. What can they do for you? You should not be roving about now. It looks very ill." "But where shall I go if you drive me away? What shall I do?" "Oh, I'll warrant you know where to go and what to do. Mind you don't do wrong, that's all. Here is a penny. Now go." "The penny cannot feed me, and I have no strength to go further. Don't shut the door. Oh, don't, for God's sake." "I must. The rain is driving in." "Tell the young ladies. Let me see them." "Indeed, I will not. You are not what you ought to be, or you wouldn't make such a noise. Move off." "But I must die if I'm turned away." "Not you. I am feared you have some ill plans agape that bring you about folks' houses at this time of night. If you've any followers, housebreakers or such like anywhere near, you may tell them we are not by ourselves in this house. We have a gentleman, and dogs, and guns." Here the honest but inflexible servant clapped the door to and bolted it within. This was the climax. A pain of exquisite suffering, a throe of true despair rent and heaved my heart. Worn out indeed I
Come
was.
back.
Not another step could I stir. I sunk on the wet doorstep. I groaned. I wrung my hands. I wept in utter anguish. Oh, this specter of death. Oh, this last hour approaching in such horror. Alas, this isolation, this banishment from my kind. Not only the anchor of hope, but the footing of fortitude was gone, at least for a moment, but the last I soon endeavored to regain. "I can but die," I said, "and I believe in God. Let me try to wait his will in silence." These words I had not only thought, but uttered, and thrusting back all the misery into my heart, I made an effort to compel it to remain there, dumb and still. "All men must die," said a voice quite close to me, "but all are not condemned to meet a lingering and premature doom, such as yours would be if you perished here of want." "Who or what speaks?" I asked, terrified at the unexpected sound, and incapable now of deriving from any occurrence a hope of aid. A form was near. What form? The pitch-dark night and my enfeebled vision prevented me from distinguishing. With a loud knock, the newcomer appealed to the door. "Is that you, Mr. St. John?" cried Hannah. Yes. Open quickly." "Well, how wet and cold you must be, such a wild night as it is. Come in. Your sisters are quite uneasy about you, and I believe there are bad folks about. There's been a beggar woman. I declare she is not gone yet. Laid down there. Get up. For shame. Move off, I say." "Hush, Hannah. I have a word to say to the woman. You have done your duty in excluding. Now let me do mine in admitting her. I was near and listened to both you and her. I think this is a peculiar case. I must at least examine into it. Young woman, rise and pass before me into the house."
I never stopped believing in you.
With difficulty,
You're
I
here to
obeyed
take
him.
control of all
Presently, I
Britannia
stood
back
within
again,
that clean,
eh?
bright kitchen, on the very hearth, trembling,
You're gonna need
sickening,
'em now.
conscious of an
Shows
aspect in the
guts.
last degree ghastly, wild and weather-beaten. The two ladies, their brother, Mr. St. John, the old servant, were all gazing at me. St. John, who is it? I heard one ask. I cannot tell. I found her at the door, was one reply. She does look white, said Hannah. As white as clay or death, was responded. She will fall. Let her sit. And indeed my head swam. I dropped, but a chair received me. I still possessed my senses, though just now I could not speak. Perhaps a little water would restore her. Hannah, fetch some. Oh, but she is worn to nothing. How very thin, and how very bloodless. A mere spectre. Is she ill, or only famished? Famished, I think. Hannah, is that milk? Give it me, and a piece of bread. Diana, I knew her by the long curls which I saw drooping between me and the fire as she bent over me, broke some bread, dipped it in milk, and put it to my lips. Her face was near mine. I saw there was pity in it, and I felt sympathy in her hurried breathing. In her simple words, too, the same balm-like emotion spoke. Try to eat. Yes, try, repeated Mary gently, and Mary's hand removed my sodden bonnet and lifted my head. I tasted what they offered me, feebly at first, eagerly soon. Not too fast at first. Restrain her, said the brother. She has had enough. And he withdrew the cup of milk and the plate of bread. Oh, a little more, St. John. Look at the avidity in her eyes. No more at present, sister. Try if she can speak now. Ask her name. I felt I could speak, and I answered, My name is Jane Elliott. Anxious as ever to avoid discovery, I had before resolved to assume an alias. And where do you live? Where are your friends? I was silent. Can we send for anyone you know? I shook my head. What account can you give of yourself? Somehow, now that I had once crossed the threshold of this house and once was brought face to face with its owners, I felt no longer outcast, vagrant, and disowned by the wide world. I dared to put off the mendicant, to resume my natural manner and character. I began once more to know myself, and when Mr. St. John demanded an account, which at present I was far too weak to render, I said after a brief pause, Sir, I can give you no details tonight. But what then, said he, do you expect me to do for you? Nothing, I replied. My strength sufficed for but short answers. Diana took the word. Do you mean, she asked, that we have now given you what aid you require, and that we may dismiss you to the moor in the rainy night? I looked at her. She had, I thought, a remarkable countenance, instinct both of power and goodness. I took sudden courage. Answering her compassionate gaze with a smile, I said, I will trust you. If I were a masterless and stray dog, I know that you would not turn me from your hearth tonight as it is. I really have no fear. Do with me and for me as you like, but excuse me from much discourse. My breath is short. I feel a spasm when I speak. All three surveyed me, and all three were silent. Hannah, said Mr. St. John at last, let her sit there at present, and ask her no questions. In 10 minutes more, give her the remainder of that milk and bread. Mary and Diana, let us go into the parlor and talk the matter over. They withdrew. Very soon one of the ladies returned, I could not tell which. A kind of pleasant stupor was stealing over me as I sat by the genial fire. In an undertone she gave some directions to Hannah. Ere long, with the servant's aid, I contrived to mount a staircase. My dripping clothes were removed. Soon a warm, dry bed received me. I thanked God, experienced amid unutterable exhaustion a glow of grateful joy, and slept. And that concludes chapter 28 of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for more reading and tea. And I encourage you again to please go ahead and vote on or submit titles that you think we should read next onto the other thread that I started in the Tea with Jane Eyre group. And if you see any other titles that someone else has submitted that you like, go ahead and vote on it. And we'll announce next Tuesday what's going to be the next book that we're going to read together. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Christina Wainwright, the manager here at the Pacific Beach Library, and I'm glad to welcome you to day 26 of our read aloud of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Thank you. today's tea is, we're going back to another one that I liked from the other week. It's the bourbon vanilla tea. Just because I saw it on my desk today and I was like, oh, that smells so good. I can't resist it. So we're going back again. We're revisiting our favorites. Just like I did with this book, come to think of it. Which reminds me, if you would like to suggest our next title, please do so online. We've had a couple good suggestions come in. Good afternoon. Hi, Judy. I would love to see what you're interested in reading together next. Like I said, I just want it to be something in the public domain. And I'm excited to see what you would like to read together. I just think that would be really fun for us to get to choose it together this next time. And thank you again for reading along with me to one of my favorites. I'd love to read one of your favorites next. Let's see. Oh, so I was going to just recap you a little bit and tell you a brief story about one of the characters. I kind of teased that a little bit on one of the drawings, the woodcut etchings that, or woodcut engraving that Judy had posted in the illustration section. So what happened yesterday in chapter 28 was that Jane Eyre she fled from Thornfield Hall, and she was wandering, and she basically had a terrible time of it. She had no money, she had no food, she was asking for help, and people were turning her away. And she understood why they had done it, but still it was hard for her. And so eventually she sees a light far off through the trees, and she goes following that light, and she comes to a house where there's two young women who we learn their names are Mary and Diana, and their servant Hannah. And eventually she gets up the courage to ask them for help, and the servant is like, no, you can't come in, I can't admit you. And so she resigns herself that she's going to just die on the porch step, basically. And so she resigns herself that she's just going to die there. But somebody hears her say those words, and the person hearing it is somebody that we learned his name is St. John. And St. John admits her in, and basically he and the sisters decide they will allow her to stay. And so where the story ends is she's been allowed to come into the house and find shelter there. So before we get into the next two chapters, and we are going to read two today, chapters 29 and 30, I just want to do a quick brief story about St. John. So the name of that character, it's actually spelled S-T, and then with a period, and then J-O-H-N. So all the years that I read it, I always thought of him as St. John. And I'm going to apologize now, too. I do a lot of apologies in these things, don't I? But in my head, every time I see it printed there, I think to myself, St. John, but pronounce it St. John, because that's the British pronunciation, which I don't know where, somewhere along the line, I learned that that's the British pronunciation for what, in my mind, I see as St. John. So, and I did double check it. I was looking on a couple other places too, and they do all agree online that if it's the British pronunciation of St. John, it is St. John. And so I've been trying really hard to say that. But if I ever do slip up and say St. John, it's the same guy. It's just I'm trying really hard to do it the proper way, the British way, instead of what my American brain wants to see it as. Which reminds me of the little story I want to tell, which I'll go quickly since we have two chapters to read today. So for anyone who is either an avid NPR listener or perhaps somebody who's in the library field, you may have heard of somebody named Nancy Pearl. Nancy Pearl is... she was a librarian with Seattle Public. She does a lot of book reviews for NPR. She's actually written a few books of her own now, both fiction as well as a series called Book Lust, which I have them on my shelf, a little Prince thing, which are just collections of, like, if you like this, you might like these kinds of books. But Nancy Pearl is such an important figure in our field that they actually, when they designed the librarian action figure, whose action is to go, the librarian action figure was modeled after Nancy Pearl. So if anyone would like to post a photo of Nancy Pearl in the comments, go ahead and do that. If not, I'll do it afterwards. But I bring up Nancy Pearl because years ago when I was at a library conference, Nancy Pearl was speaking. And of course I had to go see her, Nancy Pearl. And when I went to see Nancy Pearl, one of the stories that she told, it was just so charming and it struck so true to me. She was saying how she had been an avid reader growing up. And you could tell the people who had been avid readers and maybe perhaps not the most, not as much a talker as so much as they were a reader, because of how they would mispronounce things. Because you would read it you would pronounce it the way you had read it for years in your mind, and perhaps not the way that if you actually spoke with people, you would know how it was said. And so when I read the St. John and the St. John, I thought of that story with Nancy Pearl, because to me it is always St. John. And so every time when I'm pronouncing St. John, just so you know, I am working it. I'm trying really hard to do it the proper way for you guys. All right, so now that we know about St. John / St. John, let's find out what happens with Jane Eyre and get to know these new characters a bit more. So let's start in on chapter 29 of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And of course, let's fortify ourselves beforehand with a lovely sip of bourbon vanilla tea. If you're having something especially great today, please go ahead and comment about that. I still love seeing what y'all are drinking. That's lovely. It's always nice to have something fun to get you settled and started in. Okay, so chapter 29 of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. The recollection of about 3 days and nights succeeding this is very dim in my mind. I can recall some sensations felt in that interval, but few thoughts framed and no actions performed. I knew I was in a small room and in a narrow bed. To that bed I seemed to have grown. I lay on it motionless as a stone, and to have torn me from it would have been almost to kill me. I took no note of the lapse of time, of the change from morning to noon, from noon to evening. I observed when anyone entered or left the apartment. I could even tell who they were. I could understand what was said when the speaker stood near me, but I could not answer. To open my lips or move my limbs was equally impossible. Hannah, the servant, was my most frequent visitor. Her coming disturbed me. I had a feeling that she wished me away, that she did not understand me or my circumstances, that she was prejudiced against me. Diana and Mary appeared in the chamber once or twice a day. They would whisper sentences of this sort at my bedside. "It is very well we took her in." Yes, she would certainly have been found dead at the door in the morning had she been left out all night. I wonder what she has gone through. Strange hardships, I imagine. Poor, emaciated, pallid wanderer. She is not an uneducated person, I should think, by her manner of speaking. Her accent was quite pure, and the clothes she took off, though splashed and wet, were little worn and fine. She has a peculiar face, fleshless and haggard as it is. I rather like it, and when in good health and animated, I can fancy her physiognomy would be agreeable. Never once in their dialogues did I hear a syllable of regret at the hospitality they had extended to me, or of suspicion of or aversion to myself. I was comforted. Mr. St. John came but once. He looked at me and said my state of lethargy was the result of reaction from excessive and protracted fatigue. He pronounced it needless to send for a doctor. Nature, he was sure, would manage best, left to herself. He said every nerve had been overstrained. There was no disease. He said every nerve had been overstrained in some way, and the whole system must leap torpid a while. There was no disease. He imagined my recovery would be rapid enough when once commenced. These opinions he delivered in few words, in a quiet, low voice, and added, after a pause, in the tone of a man little accustomed to expansive comment, rather an unusual physiognomy, certainly not indicative of vulgarity or degradation. "Far otherwise," responded Diana. "To speak truth, St. John, my heart rather warms to the poor little soul. I wish we may be able to benefit her permanently." "That is hardly likely," was the reply. "You will find she is some young lady who has had a misunderstanding with her friends, and has probably injudiciously left them. We may perhaps succeed in restoring her to them if she is not obstinate, but I trace lines of force in her face which make me skeptical of her tractability." He stood considering me some minutes, then added, "She looks sensible, but not at all handsome." "She is so ill, St. John." Ill or well, she would always be plain. The grace and harmony of beauty are quite wanting in these features.
I don't have any food, though. What if
On the third day, I was better. On the fourth, I could speak, move, rise in bed, and turn. Hannah had brought me some gruel and dry toast, about, as I supposed, the dinner hour. I had eaten with relish. The food was good, void of the feverish flavor which had hitherto poisoned what I had swallowed. When she left me, I felt comparatively strong and revived. Ere long, satiety of repose and desire for action stirred me. I wished to rise, but what could I put on? Only my damp and bemired apparel, in which I had slept on the ground and fallen in the marsh. I felt ashamed to appear before my benefactors so clad. I was spared the humiliation. On a chair by the bedside were all my own things, clean and dry. My black silk frock hung against the wall. The traces of the bog were removed from it, the creases left by the wet smoothed out. It was quite decent. My very shoes and stockings were purified and rendered presentable. There were the means of washing in the room, and a comb and a brush to smooth my hair. After a weary process and resting every 5 minutes, I succeeded in dressing myself. My clothes hung loose on me, for I was much wasted, but I covered deficiencies with a shawl, and once more clean and respectable looking, no speck of the dirt, no trace of the disorder I so hated, and which seemed so to degrade me, left. I crept down a stone staircase with the aid of the banisters to a narrow, low passage, and found my way presently to the kitchen. It was full of the fragrance of new bread and the warmth of a generous fire. Hannah was baking. Prejudices, it is well known, are most difficult to eradicate from the heart whose soil has never been loosened or fertilized by education. They grow there, firm as weeds among stones. Hannah had been cold and stiff. Indeed, Hannah had been cold and stiff indeed, as the first. Latterly, she had begun to relent a little, and when she saw me come in tidy and well-dressed, she even smiled. "What, you have got up?" she said. "You are better, then. You may sit down in my chair on the hearthstone, if you will." She pointed to the rocking chair. I took it. She bustled about, examining me every now and then with the corner of her eye. Turning to me, as she took some loaves from the oven, she asked bluntly, "Did you ever go a-begging afore you came here?" I was indignant for a moment, but remembering that anger was out of the question, and that I had indeed appeared as a beggar to her, I answered quietly, but still not without a certain marked firmness, "You are mistaken in supposing me a beggar. I am no beggar, any more than yourself or your young ladies." After a pause, she said, "I do not understand that. You've like no house, nor no brass, I guess." The want of house or brass, by which I suppose you mean money, does not make a beggar in your sense of the word. "Are you book-learned?" she inquired presently. "Yes, very." "But you've never been to boarding school." "I was at a boarding school 8 years." She opened her eyes wide. "Whatever cannot you keep yourself for, then?" "I have kept myself, and, I trust, shall keep myself again." "What are you going to do with those gooseberries?" I inquired, as she brought out a basket of the fruit. "Make them into pies." "Give them to me, and I'll pick them." "Nay, I do not want you to do naught." "But I must do something. Let me have them." She consented, and even brought me a clean towel to spread over my dress, lest, as she said, I should mucky it. "You've not been used to sarvant's work, I see by your hands," she remarked. "Happen you've been a dressmaker?" "No, you are wrong.
Bye.
And now, never mind what I have been. Don't trouble your head further about me, but tell me the name of the house where we are." "Some calls it Marsh End, and some calls it Moor House." "And the gentleman who lives here is called Mr. St. John?" "Nay, he doesn't live here. He's only staying a while. When he is at home, he is at his own parish in Morton." "That village a few miles off?" "Aye." "And what is he?" "He is a parson." I remembered the answer of the old housekeeper at the parsonage when I had asked to see the clergyman. This, then, was his father's residence? Aye, old Mr. Rivers lived here, and his father, and grandfather, and great-grandfather afore him. The name, then, of that gentleman is Mr. St. John, or St. John Rivers? Aye, St. John is like his Kirsten name. And his sisters are called Diana and Mary Rivers? Yes. Their father is dead? Dead 3 weeks sin, of a stroke. They have no mother? The mistress has been dead this mony a year. Have you lived with the family long? I've lived here 30 year. I nursed them, all 3. That proves you must have been an honest and faithful servant. I will say so much for you, though you have had the incivility to call me a beggar. She again regarded me with a surprised stare. "I believe," she said, "I was quite mistaken in my thoughts of you, but there is so many cheats goes about, you mun forgive me." And though I continued, rather severely, "You wish to turn me from the door on a night when you should not have shut out a dog." Well, it was hard, but what can a body do? I thought more of the children or of myself, poor things. They'd like nobody to take care of 'em but me. I'd like to look sharpish. I maintained a grave silence for some minutes. You might think too hardly of me, she again remarked. But I do think hardly of you, I said, and I'll tell you why. Not so much because you refused to give me shelter or regarded me as an impostor, as because you just now made it a species of reproach that I had no grass and no house. Some of the best people that ever lived have been as destitute as I am, and if you are a Christian, you ought not to consider poverty of time. No more I ought, said she. Mr. St. John tells me so too, and I see I were wrong. But I've clear a different notion on you now to what I had. You look a right down decent little crater. That will do. I forgive you now. Shake hands. She put her flowery and horny hand into mine. Another and heartier smile illumined her rough face, and from that moment we were friends. Hannah was evidently fond of talking. While I picked the fruit and she made the paste for the pies, she proceeded to give me sundry details about her deceased master and mistress and the childer, as she called the young people. Old Mr. Rivers, she said, was a plain man enough, but a gentleman, and of as ancient a family as could be found. Marsh End had belonged to the Rivers ever since it was a house, and it was, she affirmed, about 200 years old, for all it looked but a small, humble place, not to compare with Mr. Oliver's grand house down in Morton Vale, but she could remember Bill Oliver's father, a journeyman needlemaker, and the Rivers were gentry in the old days of the Henrys, as anybody might see by looking into the registers of Morton Church vestry. Still she allowed, the old master was like other folk, not mick out a common way, stark mad of shooting and farming and such like. The mistress was different. She was a great reader and studied a deal, and the barons had taken after her. There was nothing like them in these parts, nor ever had been. They had liked learning, all three, almost from the time they could speak, and they had always been of a make of their own. Mr. St. John, when he grew up, would go to college and be a parson, and the girls, as soon as they left school, would seek places as governesses, for they had told her their father had some years ago lost a great deal of money by a man he had trusted turning bankrupt, and as he was now not rich enough to give them fortunes, they must provide for themselves.
No way.
They had lived very little at home for a long while, and were only now come to stay a few weeks on account of their father's death. But they did so like Marsh End and Morton, and all these moors and hills about. They had been in London and many other great towns, but they always said there was no place like home. And then they were so agreeable with each other. They never fell out nor bickered. She did not know where there was such a family for being united. Having finished my task of gooseberry picking, I asked where the two ladies and their brother were now. Gone over to Morton for a walk, but they should be back in half an hour to tea. They returned within the time Hannah had allotted them. They entered by the kitchen door. Mr. St. John, when he saw me, merely bowed and passed through. The two ladies stopped. Mary, in a few words, kindly and calmly expressed the pleasure she felt in seeing me well enough to be able to come down.
No.
Diana took my hand. She shook her head at me.
Nice job.
You should have waited for my leave to descend, she said. You still look very
The
pale
terminals that
and so
control
thin.
Rugadia are
Poor
noted by the glowing points on your map.
Child, poor girl. Diana had a voice toned to my ear like the cooing of a dove. She possessed eyes whose gaze I delighted to encounter. Her whole face seemed to me full of charm. Mary's countenance was equally intelligent, her features equally pretty, but her expression was more reserved, and her manners, though gentle, more distant. Diana looked and spoke with a certain authority. She had a will, evidently. It was my nature to feel pleasure in yielding to an authority supported like hers, and to bend, where my conscience and self-respect permitted, to an active will. And what business have you here? She continued. It is not your place. Mary and I sit in the kitchen sometimes, because at home we like to be free, even to license. But you are a visitor and must go into the parlor. I am very well here. Not at all, with Hannah bustling about and covering you with flour. Besides, the fire is too hot for you, interposed Mary. To be sure, added her sister. Come, you must be obedient. And still holding my hand, she made me rise and led me into the inner room. Sit there,
No,
she said,
I
facing me
activated
also,
the parachute.
while we take our things off and get the tea ready. It is another privilege we exercise in our little moorland home to prepare our own meals while we are so inclined, or when Hannah is baking, brewing, washing, or ironing. She closed the door, leaving me solus with Mr. St. John, who sat opposite, a book or newspaper in his hand. I examined first the parlor and then its occupant. The parlor was rather a small room, very plainly furnished, yet comfortable because clean and neat. The old-fashioned chairs were very bright, and the walnut wood table was like a looking glass. A few strange antique portraits of the men and women of other days decorated the stained walls. A cupboard with glass doors contained some books and an ancient set of china. There was no superfluous ornament in the room, not one modern piece of furniture,
remaining.
save a brace of
That's
work
the way.
boxes and a lady's desk in rosewood, which stood on a side table. Everything, including the carpet and curtains, looked at once well-worn and well-saved. Mr. St. John, sitting as still as one of the dusky pictures on the walls, keeping his eyes fixed on the page he perused and his lips neatly sealed, was easy enough to examine. Had he been a statue instead of a man, he could not have been easier. He was young, perhaps 28 to 30, tall, slender. His face riveted the eye. It was like a Greek face, very pure in outline, quite a straight classic nose, quite an Athenian mouth and chin. It is seldom indeed an English face comes so near the antique models as did his. He might well be a little shocked at the irregularity of my lineaments, his own being so harmonious. His eyes were large and blue, with brown lashes. His high forehead, colorless as ivory, was partially streaked over by careless locks of fair hair. This is a gentle delineation, is it not, reader? Yet he whom it describes scarcely impressed one with the idea of a gentle and yielding, and impressible, or even of a placid
This is
nature.
trippy.
Quiescent as he now sat, there was something about his nostril, his mouth, his brow, which to my perceptions indicated elements within either restless or hard or eager. He did not speak to me one word, nor even direct to me one glance, till his sister's return. Diana, as she passed in and out in the course of preparing tea, brought me a little cake baked on the top of the oven. "Eat that now," she said. "You must be hungry. Hannah says you have had nothing but some gruel since breakfast." I did not refuse it, for my appetite was awakened and keen. Mr. Rivers now closed his book, approached the table, and as he took a seat, fixed his blue, pictorial-looking eyes full upon me. There was an unceremonious directness, a searching, decided steadfastness in his gaze now, which told that intention and not diffidence had hitherto kept it averted from the stranger. "You are very hungry," he said. "I am, sir. It is my way, it always was my way by instinct, ever to meet the brief with brevity, the direct with plainness. It is well for you that a low fever has forced you to abstain for the last 3 days. There would have been danger in yielding to the cravings of your appetite at first. Now you may eat, though still not immoderately." "I trust that I shall not eat long at your expense, sir," was my very clumsily contrived, unpolished answer. "No," he said coolly. "When you have indicated to us the residence of your friends, we can write to them, and you may be restored to home. That, I must plainly tell you, it is out of my power to do, being absolutely without home and friends." The three looked at me, but not distrustfully. I felt there was no suspicion in their glances. There was more of curiosity. I speak particularly of the young ladies. St. John's eyes, though clear enough in a literal sense, in a figurative one, were difficult to fathom. He seemed to use them rather as instruments to search other people's thoughts than as agents to reveal his own. The combination of keenness and reserve was considerably more calculated to embarrass than to encourage. "Do you mean to say," he asked, "that you are completely isolated from every connection?" "I do. Not a tie links me to any living thing, not a claim do I possess to admittance under any roof in England." "A most singular position at your age." Here I saw his glance directed at my hands, which were folded on the table before.
There are 3
I wondered what he
terminals
sought
remaining.
there.
All
His
right,
words soon
let's get
explained the
moving.
quest. "You have never been married? You are a spinster?" Diana laughed. "Why, she can't be above 17 or 18 years old, St. John," said she.
I know what this will do.
"I am near 19, but I am not married. No." I felt a burning glow mount to my face, for bitter and agitating recollections were awakened by the allusion to marriage. They all saw the embarrassment and the emotion. Diana and Mary relieved me by turning their eyes elsewhere than to my crimsoned visage, but the colder and sterner brother continued to gaze, till the trouble he had excited forced out tears as well as color. "Where did you last reside?" he now asked. "You are too inquisitive, St. John," murmured Mary in a low voice, but he leaned over the table and required an answer by a second firm and piercing look. "The name of the place where, and of the person with whom I lived, is my secret," I replied concisely. "Which, if you like, you have, in my opinion, a right to keep, both from St. John and every other questioner," remarked Diana. "Yet if I know nothing about you or your history, I cannot help you," he said. "And you need help, do you not?" "I need it, and I seek it. So far, sir, that some true philanthropist will put me in the way of getting work which I can do, and the remuneration for which will keep me, if but in the barest necessaries of life. I know not whether I am a true philanthropist, yet I am willing to aid you to the utmost of my power in a purpose so honest. First, then, tell me what you have been accustomed to do, and what you can do." I had now swallowed my tea. I was mightily refreshed by the beverage, as much so as a giant with wine. It gave new tone to my unstrung nerves and enabled me to address this penetrating young judge steadily. "Mr. Rivers," I said, turning to him and looking at him as he looked at me, openly and without diffidence, "you and your sisters have done me a great service, the greatest man can do a fellow being. You have rescued me by your noble hospitality from death. This benefit conferred gives you an unlimited claim on my gratitude and a claim to a certain extent on my confidence. I will tell you as much of the history of the wanderer you have harbored as I can tell without compromising my own peace of mind, my own security, moral and physical, and that of others. I am an orphan, the daughter of a clergyman. My parents died before I could know them. I was brought up a dependent, educated at a charitable institution. I will even tell you the name of the establishment, where I passed 6 years as a pupil and 2 as a teacher. Lowood Orphan Asylum. Sure. You will have heard of it, Mr. Rivers? The Reverend Robert Brocklehurst is the treasurer. I have heard of Mr. Brocklehurst, and I have seen the school. I left Lowood nearly a year since to become a private governess. I obtained a good situation and was happy. This place I was obliged to leave 4 days before I came here. The reason of my departure I cannot and ought not to explain. It would be useless, dangerous, and would sound incredible. No blame attached to me. I am as free from culpability as any one of you 3. Miserable I am, and must be for a time, for the catastrophe which drove me from a house I had found a paradise was of a strange and direful nature. I observed but 2 points in planning my departure: speed, secrecy. To secure these, I had to leave behind me everything I possessed, except a small parcel, which in my hurry and trouble of mind, I forgot to take out of the coach that brought me to Whitcross. To this neighborhood then I came, quite destitute. I slept 2 nights in the open air, and wandered about 2 days without crossing a threshold. But twice in that space of time did I taste food, and it was when brought by hunger, exhaustion, and despair, almost to the last gasp, that you, Mr. Rivers, forbade me to perish with want at your door, and took me under the shelter of your roof. I know all your sisters have done for me since, for I have not been insensible during my seeming torpor, and I owe to their spontaneous, genuine, genial compassion as large a debt as to your evangelical charity. Don't make her talk any more now, St. John, said Diana as I paused. She is evidently not yet fit for excitement. Come to the sofa and sit down, Miss Elliot. I gave an involuntary half-start at hearing the alias. I had forgotten my new name. Mr. Rivers, whom nothing seemed to escape, noticed it at once. You said your name was Jane Elliot, he observed. I did say so, and it is the name by which I think it expedient to be called at present. But it is not my real name, and when I hear it, it sounds strange to me. Your real name you will not give? No. I fear discovery above all things, and whatever disclosure would lead to it, I avoid. You are quite right, I am sure, said Diana. Now, do, brother, let her be at peace a while. But when St. John had mused a few moments, he recommenced as imperturbably and with as much acumen as ever. You would not like to be long dependent on our hospitality. You would wish, I see, to dispense as soon as may be with my sister's compassion, and above all with my charity. I am quite sensible of the distinction drawn, nor do I resent it. It is just. You desire to be independent of us? I do. I have already said so. Show me how to work or how to seek work. That is all I now ask. Then let me go, if it be but to the meanest cottage. But till then, allow me to stay here. I dread another essay of the horrors of homeless destitution. Indeed, you shall stay here, said Diana, putting her white hand on my head. You shall, repeated Mary, in the tone of undemonstrative sincerity which seemed natural to her. My sisters, you see, have a pleasure in keeping you, said Mr. St. John, as they would have a pleasure in keeping and cherishing a half-frozen bird some wintry wind might have driven through their casement. I feel more inclination to put you in the way of keeping yourself, and shall endeavor to do so. But observe, my sphere is narrow. I am but the incumbent of a poor country parish. My aid must be of the humblest sort. And if you are inclined to despise the day of small things, seek some more efficient succor than such as I can offer. She has already said that she is willing to do anything honest she can do, answered Diana for me. And you know, St. John, she has no choice of helpers. She is forced to put up with such crusty people as you. I will be a dressmaker. I will be a plain workwoman. I will be a servant, a nurse girl, if I can be no better, I answered. Right, said Mr. St. John coolly. If such is your spirit, I promise to aid you, in my own time and way. He now resumed the book with which he had been occupied before tea. I soon withdrew, for I had talked as much and sat up as long as my present strength would permit. And now, chapter 30. The more I knew the inmates of Moor House, the better I liked them. In the few days, I had so far recovered my health that I could sit up all day and walk out sometimes. I could join with Diana and Mary in all their occupations, converse with them as much as they wished, and aid them when and where they would allow me. There was a reviving pleasure in this intercourse, of a kind now tasted by me for the first time. The pleasure arising from perfect congeniality of their tastes, sentiments, and principles. I liked to read what they liked to read. What they enjoyed delighted me. What they approved, I reverenced. They loved their sequestered home. I, too, in the gray, small, antique structure, with its low roof, its latticed casements, its moldering walls, its avenue of aged firs, all grown aslant under the stress of mountain winds. Its garden, dark with yew and holly, and where no flowers but of the hardiest species would bloom, found a charm, both potent and permanent. They clung to the purple moors behind and around their dwelling, to the hollow vale into which the pebbly bridle path leading from their gate descended, and which wound between fern banks first, and then among a few of the wildest little pasture fields that ever bordered a wilderness of heath, or gave sustenance to a flock of gray moorland sheep with their little mossy-faced lambs. They clung to the scene, I say, with a perfect enthusiasm of attachment. I could comprehend the feeling and share both its strength and truth. I saw the fascination of the locality. I felt the consecration of its loneliness. My eye feasted on the outline of swell and sweep, on the wild coloring communicated to ridge and dell, by moss, by heath bell, by flower-sprinkled turf, by brilliant bracken and mellow granite crag. These details were just to me what they were to them, so many pure and sweet sources of pleasure. The strong blast and the soft breeze, the rough and the halcyon day, the hours of sunrise and sunset, the moonlight and the clouded night developed for me in these regions the same attraction as for them, wound round my faculties the same spell that entranced theirs. Indoors, we agreed equally well. They were both more accomplished and better read than I was, but with eagerness I followed in the path of knowledge they had trodden before me. I devoured the books they lent me. Then it was full satisfaction to discuss with them in the evening what I had perused during the day. Thought fitted thought, opinion met opinion. We coincided, in short, perfectly. If in our trio there was a superior and a leader, it was Diana. Physically, she far excelled me. She was handsome. She was vigorous.
Okay.
In her animal spirits, there was an affluence of life and certainty of flow, such as excited my wonder while it baffled my comprehension. I could talk a while when the evening commenced, but the first gush of vivacity and fluency gone, I was fain to sit on a stool at Diana's feet, to rest my head on her knee, and listen alternately to her and Mary while they sounded thoroughly the topic on which I had but touched. Diana offered to teach me German. I liked to learn of her. I saw the part of instructress pleased and suited her, that of scholar pleased and suited me, no less. Our natures dovetailed. Mutual affection of the strongest kind was the result. They discovered I could draw. Their pencils and color boxes were immediately at my service. My skill, greater in this one point than theirs, surprised and charmed them. Mary would sit and watch me by the hour together. Then she would take lessons, and a docile, intelligent, assiduous pupil she made. Thus occupied and mutually entertained, days passed like hours, and weeks like days. As to Mr. St. John, the intimacy which had arisen so naturally and rapidly between me and his sisters did not extend to him. One reason of the distance yet observed between us was that he was comparatively seldom at home. A large proportion of his time was here devoted to visiting the sick and poor among the scattered population of his parish. No weather seemed to hinder him in these pastoral excursions. Rain or fair, he would, when his hours of morning study were over, take his hat, and followed by his father's old pointer, Carlo, go out on his mission of love or duty. I scarcely know in which light he regarded it. Sometimes when the day was very unfavorable, his sisters would expostulate. He would then say with a peculiar smile, more solemn than cheerful, "And if I let a gust of wind or a sprinkling of rain turn me aside from these easy tasks, what preparation would such sloth be for the future I propose to myself?" Diana and Mary's general answer to this question was a sigh, and some minutes of apparently mournful meditation. But besides his frequent absences, there was another barrier to friendship with him. He seemed of a reserved and abstracted and even a brooding nature. Zealous in his ministerial labors, blameless in his life and habits, he yet did not appear to enjoy that mental serenity, that inward content, which should be the reward of every sincere Christian and practical philanthropist. Often of an evening when he sat in the window, his desk and papers before him, he would cease reading or writing, rest his chin on his hand, and deliver himself up to I know not what course of thought, but that it was perturbed and exciting might be seen in the frequent flash and changeful dilation of his eye. I think, moreover, that nature was not to him that treasury of delight it was to his sisters.
Go ahead and
He expressed once, and but once, in my hearing, a strong sense of the rugged charm of the hills, and an inborn affection for the dark roof and hoary walls he called his home. But there was more of gloom than pleasure in the tone and words in which the sentiment was manifested. And never did he seek to roam the moors for the sake of their soothing silence, never seek out or dwell upon the thousand peaceful delights they could yield. Incommunicative as he was, some time elapsed before I had an opportunity of gauging his mind. I first got an idea of his caliber when I heard him preach in his own church at Morton. I wish I could describe that sermon, but it is past my power. I cannot even render faithfully the effect it produced on me. It began calm, and indeed, as far as delivery and pitch of voice went, it was calm to the end. An earnestly felt, yet strictly restrained zeal breathed soon in the distant accents, and prompted the nervous language. This grew to force, compressed, condensed, controlled. The heart was thrilled, the mind astonished by the power of the preacher. Neither were softened. Though there was a strange bitterness, an absence of consolatory gentleness, stern allusions to Calvinistic doctrines, election, predestination, reprobation were frequent, and each reference to these points sounded like a sentence pronounced for doom. When he had done, instead of feeling better, calmer, more enlightened by his discourse, I experienced an inexpressible sadness, for it seemed to me, I know not whether equally so to others, that the eloquence to which I had been listening had sprung from a depth where lay turbid dregs of disappointment, where moved troubling impulses of insatiate learnings and disquieting aspirations. I was sure St. John Rivers, pure-lived, conscientious, zealous as he was, had not yet found that peace of God which passeth all understanding. He had no more found it, I thought, than had I, with my concealed and racking regrets for my broken idol and lost Elysium, regrets to which I have latterly avoided referring, but which possessed me and tyrannized over me ruthlessly. Meantime, a month was gone. Diana and Mary were soon to leave Moor House and return to the far different life and scene which awaited them as governesses in a large, fashionable south of England city, where each held a situation in families by whose wealthy and haughty members they were regarded only as humble dependents, and who neither knew nor sought one of their innate excellences, and appreciated only their acquired accomplishments as they appreciated the skill of their cook or the taste of their waiting woman. Mr. St. John had said nothing to me yet about the employment he had promised to obtain for me, yet it became urgent that I should have a vocation of some kind. One morning, being left alone with him a few minutes in the parlor, I ventured to approach the window recess, which is table, chair, and desk consecrated as a kind of study, and I was going to speak, though not very well knowing in what words to frame my inquiry, for it is at all times difficulty to break the ice of reserve glassing over such natures as his, when he saved me the trouble by being the first to commence a dialogue. Looking up as I drew near, "You have a question to ask of me?" he said. "Yes. I wish to know whether you have heard of any service I can offer myself to undertake. I found or devised something for you 3 weeks ago, but as you seem both useful and happy here, as my sisters had evidently become attached to you, and your society gave them unusual pleasure, I deemed it inexpedient to break in on your mutual comfort till their approaching departure from Marsh End should render yours necessary." "And they will go in 3 days now?" I said. "Yes, and when they go, I shall return to the parsonage at Morton. Hannah will accompany me, and this old house will be shut up." I waited a few moments, expecting he would go on with the subject first broached, but he seemed to have entered another train of reflection. His look denoted abstraction from me and my business. I was obliged to recall him to a theme which was of necessity one of close and anxious interest to me. "What is the employment you had in view, Mr. Rivers? I hope this delay will not have increased the difficulty of securing it." "Oh, no. Since it is an employment which...
Ouch.
Since it is an employment which depends only on me to give and you to accept." He again paused.
Watch your step.
There seemed a reluctance to continue. I grew impatient. A restless movement or two and an eager and exacting glance fastened on his face conveyed the feeling to him as effectually as words could have done, and with less trouble. "You need be in no hurry to hear," he said. "Let me frankly tell you, I have nothing eligible or profitable to suggest. Before I explain, recall, if you please, my notice, clearly given, that if I helped you, it must be as the blind man would help the lame. I am poor, for I find that, when I have paid my father's debts, all the patrimony remaining to me will be this crumbling grange, the row of scathed firs behind, and the patch of moorish soil with the yew trees and holly bushes in front. I am obscure. Rivers is an old name, but of the 3 sole descendants of the race, 2 are in the dependence crust among strangers, and the 3rd considers himself an alien from his native country, not only for this life, but in death. Yes, and deems, and is bound to keep himself honored by the lot, and aspires but after the day when the cross of separation from fleshly ties shall be laid on his shoulders, and when the head of the church militant of those endless numbers he has won shall give the word, "Rise, follow me." St. John said these words as he pronounced his sermons, in a quiet, deep voice, with an unflushed cheek and a coruscating radiance of glance. He resumed, "And since I am myself poor and obscure, I can offer you but a service of poverty and obscurity. You may even think it degrading, for I see now your habits have been what the world calls refined. Your tastes lean to the ideal, and your society has at least been among the educated. But I consider that no service degrades which can better our race. I hold that the more arid and unreclaimed the soil where the Christian laborer's task of tillage is appointed him, the scantier the meed his toil brings, the higher the honor. His, under such circumstances, is the destiny of the pioneer, and the first pioneers of the gospel were the apostles. Their captain was Jesus, the Redeemer himself." "Well," I said as he again paused, "proceed." He looked at me He looked at me before he proceeded. Indeed, he seemed leisurely to read my face, as if its features and lines which were characters on a page. The conclusions drawn from the scrutiny he partially expressed in his succeeding observations. I believe you will accept the post I offer you, said he, and hold it for a while. Not permanently, though, any more than I could permanently keep narrowing the tranquil, hidden office of English country incumbent. For in your nature, there is an alloy as detrimental to repose as that in mine, though of a different kind. Do explain, I urged, when he halted once more. I will, and you shall hear how poor the proposal is, how trivial, how cramped. I shall not stay long, now that my father is dead and that I am my own master. I shall leave the place probably in the course of a 12-month. But while I do stay, I will exert myself to the utmost.
Hide the air.
Morton, when I came to it 2 years ago, had no school. The children of the poor were excluded from every hope of progress. I established one for boys, and mean now to open a second school for girls.
I'm struggling.
I have hired a building for the purpose with a cottage of 2 rooms attached to it for the mistress's house. Her salary would be £30 a year. Her house is already furnished, very simply but sufficiently, by the kindness of a lady, Miss Oliver, the only daughter of the sole rich man in my parish, Mr. Oliver, the proprietor of a needle factory and iron foundry in the valley. The same lady pays for the education and clothing of an orphan from the workhouse, on condition that she shall aid the mistress in such menial offices connected with her own house and the school as her occupation of teaching will prevent her having time to discharge her duty. Will you be this mistress? He put the question rather hurriedly. He seemed half to expect an indignant, or at least a disdainful rejection of the offer. Not knowing all my thoughts and feelings, though guessing some, he could not tell in what light the lot would appear to me. In truth, it was humble, but then it was sheltered, and I would say a state of asylum. It was plodding, but then, compared with that of a governess in a rich house, it was independent, and the fear of servitude with strangers entered my soul like iron. It was not ignoble, not unworthy, not
What
meant
the
to
heck?
degrade.
You're just
I made my
exploding
decision.
the stupid air.
I thank you for the proposal, Mr. Rivers, and I accept it with all my heart. But you comprehend me, he said. It is a village school. Your scholars will be only poor girls, cottagers' children, at the best, farmers' daughters. Knitting, sewing, reading, writing, ciphering will be all you will have to teach. What will you do with your accomplishments? What with the largest portion of your mind? Sentiments, tastes. Save them till they are wanted. They will keep. You know what you undertake then? I do. He now smiled, and not a bitter or a sad smile, but one well pleased and deeply gratified. And when will you commence the exercise of your function? I will go to my house tomorrow and open a school, if you like, next week. Very well.
No, I
So
can't
be it.
get hit by that again. That's
He rose
crap.
and walked through the room. Standing still, he again looked at me. He shook his head. What do you disapprove of, Mr. Rivers? I asked. You will not stay at Morton long. No. Why? What is your reason for saying so? I read it in your eye. It is not of that description which promises the maintenance of an even tenor in life. I am not ambitious. He started at the word ambitious. He repeated, no. What made you think of ambition?
I'm struggling.
Who is ambitious? I know I am, but how did you find it out? I was speaking of myself. Well, if you are not ambitious, you are... He paused. What? I was going to say impassioned, but perhaps you would have misunderstood the word and been displeased. I mean that human affections and sympathies have a most powerful hold on you. I am sure you cannot long be content to pass your leisure in solitude and to devote your waking hours to monotonous labor, wholly void of stimulus, any more than I can be content, to live here buried in morass, pent in with the mountains.
I don't have a shield.
My
That's
nature
great.
that God gave me contravened. My faculties that heaven bestowed, paralyzed, made useless. You hear now how I contradict myself. I who preach contentment with the humble lot and justify the vocation even of hewers of wood and drawers of water in God's service. I, his ordained minister, almost rave in my restlessness. Well, Propensities and principles must be reconciled by some means. He left the room. In this brief hour, I had learned more of him than in the whole previous month, yet still he puzzled me. Diana and Mary Rivers became more sad and silent as the day approached for leaving their brother in their home. They both tried to appear as usual, but the sorrow they had to struggle against was one that could not be entirely conquered or concealed. Diana intimated that this would be a different parting from any they had ever yet known. It would probably, as far as St. John was concerned, be a parting for years. It might be a parting for life. He will sacrifice all to his long-framed resolves.
So,
said.
just
Natural
exploding
affection
the
and
air
feelings
doesn't
more
work
potent
for me
still.
because, like,
St. John looks at Jane, but he hides a fever in his vitals. You would think him gentle, yet in some things he is as inexorable as death.
think so?
And the worst of it is, my conscience will hardly permit me to dissuade him from his severe decision.
Oh, it's the
Certain
bomb
I cannot
arrows.
blame him for it.
Okay.
It is right, noble,
I see the
Christian,
problem, maybe.
Yet it breaks my heart. And the tears gushed to her fine eyes. Mary bent her head low over her work. We are now without father. We shall soon be without home and brother, she murmured. At that moment, a little accident supervened, which seemed decreed by fate purposely to prove the truth of the adage that misfortunes never come singly, and to add to their distresses the vexing one of the slip between the cup and the lip. St. John passed the window reading a letter. He entered. Uncle John is dead, he said. Both the sisters seemed not shocked or appalled. The tidings appeared in their eyes rather momentous than afflicting. Dead? Said Diana. Yes. She riveted a searching gaze on her brother's face. And what then? She demanded in a low voice. What then? Die? He replied, maintaining a marble immobility of feature. What then? Why, nothing. Read. He threw a letter into her lap. She glanced over it and handed it to Mary. Mary perused it in silence and returned it to her brother. All three looked at each other, and all three smiled, a dreary, pensive smile enough. Amen. We can yet live, said Diana at last. At any rate, it makes us no worse off than we were before, remarked Mary.
No.
Only it forces rather strongly on the mind the picture of what might have been, said Mr. Rivers, and contrasts it somewhat too vividly with what is. He folded the letter, locked it in his desk, and then went out. For some minutes no one spoke. Diana then turned to me. Jane, you will wonder at us and our mysteries, she said, and think us hard-hearted beings not to be moved at the death of so near a relation as an uncle. But we have never seen him or known him. He was my mother's brother. My father and he quarreled long ago. It was by his advice that my father risked most of his property in the speculation of ruining him. Mutual recriminations passed between them. They parted in anger and were never reconciled. My uncle engaged afterward in more prosperous undertakings. It appears he realized a fortune of £20,000. He has never married and had no near kindred but ourselves, and one other person, not more closely related than me. My father always cherished the idea that he would atone for his error by leaving his possessions to us. That letter informs us that he has bequeathed every penny to the other relation, with the exception of 30 guineas, to be divided between St. John, Diana, and Mary Rivers for the purchase of 3 mourning rings. He had a right, of course, to do as he pleased, and yet a momentary damp was cast on the spirits by the receipt of such news. Mary and I would have esteemed ourselves rich, and to St. John such a sum would have been valuable for the good it would have enabled him to do. This explanation and no further reference made to it by either Mr. Rivers or his sisters. The next day, I left Marsh End for home. The day after, Diana and Mary quitted the distant community. In a week, Mr. Rivers and Hannah repaired to the parsonage, and so the old grange was abandoned. And that concludes Chapter 30 of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Thank you again for joining me. Tomorrow we're going to do another 2-chapter day. Those will be a little shorter than today's reading. And like I said, we're going to finish Jane Eyre next Friday, so please go ahead and comment about what book you'd like to read next. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's Christina Wainwright from the Pacific Beach branch of the San Diego Public Library.
Well, that was a fun one. Thanks so much for swinging by. Begin by simply listening. Slow down. See just how peaceful. I have been your host, Sebastian Saint Sheikah Smalls, your obedient servant. You're killing me, Smalls. Vincent twice. You can always call me Bennett.
Let's see, where did we leave off in the story? In the last two chapters, Jane
Great
woke up.
work, little guy.
Thanks again for swinging by.
She was with the river
Catch you guys on the flip side.
I owe you big dues. Because of you, my spirit is finding free. Thank you enough. I feel like I should apologize. I was doing all I could to protect my thing got the best of me. Sorry that me wrestling with the rubber caused such a mess. The good news is, Rutania is now back under our control. That means that our century-old Ganon Deacons can finally go into effect. I'm gonna take this down the mountain. I'll have a better shot at Ganon. And then, once we take the big ride with the castle, we're gonna light that thing up. I want to use this. It's a special power. It's no good to me now that I'm sick, but it might be useful for you. Here it comes!
every day for the next few days is that I am inviting you to please nominate
From this
a title
moment
that you think
forward,
would be fun for us to read
Power of
together.
protection.
We are going to be finishing
From the
Jane
depths
Eyre
of my
Twice
soul
Rotate
now
next
lives
Friday
inside you.
on May the 29th. And so I would very much love for you to nominate or if you
Good
see a
luck,
book that
little
is
guy.
the title already suggested but you're just
And
like,
give my
like it.
regards to the princess.
And then next Tuesday when we start our next read aloud, I'm going to go ahead and pick from the top 3 vote getters what's the book that we're going to read next. And so again, I invite you to go ahead and nominate some book if you haven't seen it there yet on the list. There's a thread in our Tea with Jane Eyre group. Please suggest the title that you'd like to read. It just needs to be from the public domain. But yeah, it's a nice opportunity to get to pick a book that you love, or maybe one that you've never read before that you've always wanted to read. We can explore it together. So let's go ahead and get started on that. And of course, it's nice to have a good mug of tea or whatever it is before we get started. So let's go. That is very good. It is also very hot. I'm going to let this one cool down for a little bit, but that's fine. I'm kind of touching each back before that is fine. Okay, so let's get started with chapters 31 and 32. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Chapter 31. My home then, when I at last found a home, is a cottage, a little home with white marble walls and sanded floor.
Well, that ought to do it.
Above, a
We're
chamber
set
of same
here.
dimensions as the
Now we
kitchen,
just gotta
with
wait
a
for
deal
the
bedstead
perfect
and
shot.
chest of drawers, small, yet too large to be
Once
filled
Link
with
is
my
in the
scanty
castle,
wardrobe,
Rutania
though the
will
kindness
unleash
of
an
my
epic
gentle and
blast.
generous friends has increased that by a
Ganon
broad stock
won't
of
know
such
what
things
hit
as
him.
necessary. It is evening. I have
Hyrule
dismissed
looks
with the
pretty
vivid
good from
orange
up here,
the little orphan who
even
serves me
after
as a
100
handmaid.
years.
I am sitting alone on the hearth.
The old
This
rolling
morning, the
grounds
village
sure
hall
are a
opened.
sight for
I had
sore
20
eyes.
scholars.
I wonder
But
how
three of
the
the number
Blondes
can read,
fared after the
none
Great
can write or
Calamity.
cipher.
I sure
Several
hope
men,
everyone
and a few
down
so
there is
little.
still going
They
strong
speak with
after
the
every...
broadest accent
Huh?
in the district. At present, they and I have a difficulty in understanding each other's language. Some of them are unmannered, rough,
Hey,
and intractable,
look
as
at
well as
that.
ignorant. But
Still
others are
going
docile
strong
and wish
indeed.
to learn,
Ha!
and evince a disposition that pleases me. I must not forget that these coarsely clad little peasants are of flesh and blood as good as the scions of gentlest genealogy, and that the germs of native excellence, refinement, intelligence, kind feeling are as likely to exist in their hearts as in those of the best women. My duty will be to develop these germs. Surely I shall find some happiness in discharging this office. Much enjoyment I do not expect in the life opening before me, Yet it will, doubtless, if I regulate my mind and exert my powers as I ought, yield me enough to live on from day to day. Was I very gleeful, settled, content during the hours I passed in yonder bare, humble schoolroom this morning? Not to deceive myself, I must reply, no. I felt desolate to a degree. I felt, yes, idiot that I am, I felt degraded. I doubted I had taken a step which sunk instead of raising me up in the scale of social existence. I was weakly dismayed at the ignorance, the poverty, the coarseness of all I heard and saw around me. But let me not hate and despise myself too much for these feelings. I know them to be wrong. That is a great step gained. I shall strive to overcome them. Tomorrow, I trust, I shall get the better of them partially, and in a few weeks, perhaps, they will be quite subdued. In a few months, it is possible, the happiness of seeing progress and a change for the better in my scholars may substitute gratification for disgust. Meantime, let me ask myself one question. Which is better, to have surrendered to temptation, listened to passion, made no painful effort, no struggle, but to have sunk down in the silken snare, fallen on the flowers covering it, wakened in a southern clime among the luxuries of a pleasure villa, to have been now living in France, Mr. Rochester's mistress, delirious with his love half my time, for he would, oh yes, he would have loved me well for a while. He did love me. No one will ever love me so again. I shall never more know the sweet homage given to beauty, youth, and grace, for never to anyone else shall I seem to possess those charms. He was fond and proud of me. It is what no man besides will ever be. But where am I wandering, and what am I saying, and above all feeling? Whether it is better, I ask, to be a slave in a fool's paradise at Marseille, fevered with delusive bliss one hour, suffocating with the bitterest tears of remorse and shame the next, or to be a village schoolmistress, free and honest in a breezy mountain nook in the healthy heart of England. Yes, I feel now that I was right when I adhered to principle and law, and scorned and crushed the insane promptings of a frenzied moment. God directed me to a correct choice. I thank his providence for the guidance. Having brought my eventide musings to this point, I rose, went to my door, and looked at the sunset of the harvest day, and at the quiet fields before my cottage, which, with the school, was distant half a mile from the village. The birds were singing their last strains. The air was mild, the dew was balm. While I looked, I thought myself happy, and was surprised to find myself ere long weeping. And why? For the doom which had reft me from adhesion to my master. For him I was no more to see. For the desperate grief and fatal fury, consequences of